Welcome everyone. I'm going to go ahead and reset us. So you are here at SciStarter Live, our weekly webinar series. We're talking about gaming to make discoveries and solve problems. And we're going to be talking about quite a few video games that help via citizen science. So I'm going to stop my share and have our two guests introduce themselves. Attila, would you like to go first?
Yes, so I'm Attila Sanner. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Massively Multiplayer Online Science, which is a small Swiss company that focuses on a special way to do citizen science, which is connecting video games with citizen science. I'm also an adjunct professor at McGill University.
And I am Jérôme Valdispul, and I'm an associate professor of computer science at McGill University, so at the School of Computer Science. My research initially was more I'm a computer scientist, but working in bioinformatics to try to apply and design intelligent system for deciphering biological data. And interestingly, that brings me to video games. And this is what we'll discuss today with Attila.
Excellent. All right, I will let you two take it away then with your slide deck.
Yep, just a sec.
All right.
All right. So
no, that's not that. So
I think you just go back.
I could speak on that one, but I would prefer, this one would be easier.
Yeah.
All right. So let's start from relatively far, but that will give, I think, a strong background and foundation for all the work that we've been conducting with Attila here. And I hope give you a perspective about where we start and where we want to go. So this is a diagram that you model roughly how we see the scientific process is working. So typically, when you're working in science, you try to understand the world around you, and you start with a model that is an abstract representation, mathematical representation of what's going on, that you can use to build hypotheses. Then based on this hypothesis, you conduct an experiment that help you to probe the nature of the world and the validity of the hypothesis you made. And because it's impossible to some extent to have a perfect match with the model and the experiment, sometimes there's small discrepancies that we can detect through the analysis of the result of the experiment, and we can re-inject that knowledge into the modeling part, so to update our model to make it closer to reality, and then iterate this loop as long as we need to get a convincing picture of the world around us. So in these different component of the scientific method, the one that will be interesting for us here is really about analyzing the results. So when you're collecting data from the world, how do you decipher them and analyzing them to extract the signal we need to understand the world? And what you have to understand is like this task here is, at least nowadays, intrinsically tight collaboration by computers and humans. We can generate tons of data from multiple different experiments, and computers are quite good at cracking the numbers and processing a lot of data very quickly. But often, if you don't have this view of the scientist behind trying to correct the mistake that the computer will do, you cannot go very far. So we always need to have this combination of human and computers analyzing these results to advance the scientific process. Next slide. So now to understand the real nature of the problem that we're facing, they are basically twofold. The first thing is like all computational problem trying to solve in biology in my case, but in science in general, they are super hard. And they belong often to a category that we call NP-hard, where those are problems that basically it would take you centuries to solve exactly the problems. So often what the computer program are doing is taking shortcuts to return an answer in a reasonable time, so within your lifetime, hopefully, and use it to advance the science. But arguably, I would say, even if it's a very big challenge, this might not be the most complicated one. Often when you design a program, what you need is to have an approximation, a scoring function, an objective function that guide the program to compute the best solution. So it's basically a score or a metric that helps you to define what is good and what is bad. And we like to think that scientists know this function, but the truth is we don't. And this is where we fundamentally need humans, is because this function that tells us if the result I computed with my computer is good or not might be close, but might not be perfect. And we cannot encapsulate that in a mathematical function. So at the end, what's happening, it's always a scientist coming behind that will correct the biases of the computers that always occurs and complete the computation, eventually iterate along that cycle. Next slide. So the way we see science nowadays also is always having a genius in his lab. And you all here recognize perhaps one of the greatest genius of all time. So Marie Curie here, that sitting in his lab, observing what's going on and make discoveries. And this is a very idealistic version or romantic version of science, but science nowadays changed radically and is no longer like this. Next slide. The truth is like science is made many massive data sets. And imagine that for each data set, you need an expert. So we no longer, when we want to advance science nowadays, it's no longer having one scientist knowing everything and solving the problems. It's a network of scientists collaborating together, all expert of one tiny part of their problems, and aggregating that knowledge to advance science together. Next slide. And this process has become so ubiquitous in science that if you look at the largest, the more fundamental paper in science, like the ENCODE project here, now there's so many scientists contributing to this project that literally we have to put the name of the scientist in the supplementary material. We have teams of hundreds, thousands of researchers working together that are necessary all together to advance the science. So that raises a question, which is the scalability of this process. Next slide, please. The thing is, in science, the problem becomes more and more fundamental. We need more and more people, but eventually we're reaching the limit of the systems. There's not enough PhD on Earth. There's not enough research on Earth. There's not enough researcher altogether and specialists of every specific data sets to be able to perform all tasks. So we need to go beyond the ivory tower of academia and basically bring back science to the society where we can recruit participants, to help us to advance science and make discoveries. Next slide. So the question is, how do we do that? Well, that's what we're trying to do here is to solve computational problem, and in that case related to biology, but in science in general. So we have to understand where are people that are potentially the most skilled to solve these computational problems efficiently. And it turns out that there is a fantastic resource at our disposal that are video games. So imagine that collectively we're spending more than 5,000 lifetime every week to play video games, 3 billion hours, I think even more than that nowadays. It's a huge resource. Now, if you think about what a game actually is a problem. It is a problem, but it's embedded into an interface that is entertaining, that makes you happy when you're solving these problems. So there is here a huge resources of human processing powers that is spent every day solving problems, but where does it go? Nothing, nowhere. Next slide. So the program we're trying to set up here when I arrived at McGill in 2010 was, can we try to take profit of all these, or at least a fraction of the time spent on video games to do something useful. And in my case, because I was working in bioinformatics, I was working on analyzing the DNA of mammals in that particular context. And here you have an example of the first game that we launched in 2010 that we called Philo. So Philo is a small puzzle, a bit like a Tetris. I mean, I would like to say it's a tile-matching games, where every row represents a fragment of DNA, and you try to compare it to reveal similarities by arranging the data. And the games were launched in 2010, and you see here that we try to leverage the possibility of the human possibility of arranging the visual pattern recognition capacity of human brain to efficiently compute that task. Because the truth is that this task is completely very hard for computers, but is usually solved relatively efficiently by human just by looking at how the different patterns are organized on this map. So we try to embed that into a game that we put on a web page, and people participate to help us to improve upon the alignment process by computer before. Next slide. So the human genome is about 3 billion characters long. That's huge. And we want to compare hundreds of them. So it's a mass of data. It's an amount of data that cannot be processed by a single player, of course. So everything we're doing, of course, as I was mentioning at the very beginning, is a collaboration between human and computers. So the process which we set up with Philo was to start first with genomes that were pre-aligned by a computer program, so not using human, but we know this alignment is not perfect. So what are we doing is that we're scanning this alignment, we identified region of the alignment that potentially could be improved, and we store these regions into a database. And these are the games that you're playing in Philo, because this is where we need the human supervision. This is where we need a human to basically look at the data, because our brain would tell us very quickly if there's something wrong with it, if we miss something important that was not encoded into the algorithm, and eventually to fix the mistake to make more reliable data. And when we collect this data that has been supervised or reviewed by human, we can re-inject it into the alignment and produce this analysis of the DNA that is improved compared to on the state and match the state of the art. Next slide. So why Philo was a fundamental, the fundamental pillars of Philo, and what makes it successful and relevant. First is because we're addressing a fundamental problem in molecular biology. It's important when you develop a game that hopefully will be played by thousands or millions of people to be broadly relevant. So the multiple sequence alignment problem we address, I discussed here when I didn't go into the detail, but you have to understand this is one of the most important problems in molecular biology. Almost all papers in biology have one way or another a sequence alignment problem in it. And the algorithm that's been developed to solve this are among the most cited in the world. Second thing, well, it's a problem that is very difficult for computers and for which we benefit of human supervision. And this is also important because when you're developing such a game, you want to be sure that when you engage a lot of participants, their contribution is meaningful and useful. And third, and I think that potentially was the main contribution of Philo here, is we try to embed this task into a casual time-matching game, something very approachable, something that anyone can play. You may say that I cannot do multiple sequence alignment, but no one can tell me he cannot play Tetris. And this is what we try to do here. We embed these very complex problems that are not so complex, put them into a casual game that anyone can play. So anyone can contribute, and at the same time realizing that the problem was not so complicated and anyone can do science. Next slide. So Philo was launched in 2010. It was a successful project on many aspects. We had many papers in Radio Canada, Wired, Le Monde. And we estimate between 1 million, a bit more than 1 million, solution collected, nearly 2 million puzzle solution collected, and around 700,000 participants to the game over a period of 10 years. So we took this data, we analyzed it, and we showed that the concept works. Between 40 and 95% of the puzzle that we collected were improving upon the state-of-the-art algorithm for making this alignment. We applied that to some gene promoter regions, and we showed that the concept is working. However, next slide. Philo was just the beginning. What we really wanted to do is to address a next frontier and apply this technology to in particular here, try to sort and analyze data from a human microbiome. And now we're speaking about millions of sequences. We're speaking about massive amount of data that outpace by several order of magnitude what we had with Philo. And the problem that we had at this point is the following. Philo works, it gives better results. However, we don't have enough people to play it. How do we do this? So I was scratching my head about this. And this is when I met Attila, who basically told us his contribution with MMOS to this fundamental problem of engagement for this scientific task.
Yeah, so as I mentioned in the introduction, there are two things that we're connecting: video games and citizen science. And I'd like to start with this slide, which shows a really old, seemingly really old video game, an arcade machine, which I think probably have never been really the focus of presentations about video games, but believe me that this actual arcade machine is very relevant even today. This arcade machine has been on exhibition up until this July at the University of Arts in Zurich, the Museum of Gestaltung, where they had a really nice video game design exhibition. It's a piece of art. The company who made this arcade machine, this custom-made arcade machine, is the same company who created, if I'm not mistaken, the props for the Hollywood movie The Mandalorian. So you can imagine the quality and the attention to details. But more importantly, it's interesting for us because this arcade machine was not born in the physical world originally, but it was born in the digital world. This arcade machine is an arcade machine which can be found in a video game called Borderlands, and you see the same background image for Jérôme. And just for you to appreciate the level of details, I switch it back and forth so that you see that all the small things which originally was created by designers of Borderlands have been recreated real life. So this my part of the talk will tell how this arcade machine ended up in Borderlands and ended up in Zurich as well. Now, I wanted to mention that, and it was interesting in the introduction when Emma said that she's not playing video games, and often what I see, especially in scientific conferences, that people still think about video games as some sort of nerdy pastime, whereas it cannot be more mainstream. So according to industry surveys, there are about 3 billion people playing video games, and this number is rapidly growing. I think it's not a far-fetched prediction that sooner or later everybody will be engaged in some sort of activity that now we consider as video games. Also, it's not true anymore that it's a pastime for teenage boys, but if you look at the US industry data, the proportion of men and women engaged in video games are almost 50-50. So it has really become one of the most important form of entertainment. And also it became much more. So we've seen this development that in the last decades, how video games become from just, let's say, games to something which is now almost a focal point, or one of the most important focal point of our digital life. So the video games are a place to meet, to communicate, to entertain, to be entertained, to educate, and many other things. So I think it's very important that we take video games seriously and try to see how we can use this enormous power in many ways, which can produce important real life results. The other thing or other main focus of my work in the last 10 years, let's say, is citizen science, which I think at the SciStarter webinar, I don't have to go into detail what citizen science is. For me, this whole story started somewhere around when Zooniverse, or before Zooniverse, Galaxy Zoo was launched. And it was a really intriguing proposition for me as an outsider. You can contribute to research. And so I followed how citizen science developed in the last 15 years. And, one of the things that I knew about is that it really suffers from the problem of acquiring users, like getting people to hop on these projects and then engaging them in the long term. So keeping them as contributors for as long as the research project goes on. I mean, it's kind of a traditional pattern with any sort of online service, that there is an initial peak in interest and then it drops off, and if you're lucky, then it plateaus at a sustainable level. With citizen science, I think this is even a more plausible challenge for project leaders, that this initial peak of interest drops off very quickly. And one of the reasons for that is that even though people love the idea to contribute to citizen science, and that has been researched, in reality, often what we ask people to contribute with is something which is highly repetitive, and for most of the people, it becomes very quickly very boring. And then they do a couple of submissions and at the project, and then they leave and never come back. And so that's where my story started, is that with a friend of mine, we came up with an idea of how to solve this problem. And our solution was to say that if we have an engagement problem, why don't we go to the people who are masters of keeping us engaged, video game developers and video game designers, and primarily asking two things. One is to help with their expertise of often decades-long expertise of how to make really fun and engaging experiences for players, and also to give access to their existing communities, gamer communities of which often extend to millions or tens of millions of people. Game mechanics, gamification has been used in citizen science before. Citizen science project leads even created standalone mini games. I mean, Philo is a good example of that, but you can I think one of the first one, which was notable, the mobile mini game Cell Sliders on Galaxy Zoo, if I'm not mistaken. So this or Genes in Space, sorry, Genes in Space, but our idea was not to try to solve this problem ourselves as citizen science practitioners, but rather to involve the industry, the real video game industry, and set up collaborations and thus solve this problem. So I had no prior connection to the video game industry, but I felt that this is just too important. So I started to try to get in contact with them. And luckily, there were some people who were very, very receptive to this idea. One of the first companies that I contacted was an Icelandic company called CCP. That they're the developers of one of the oldest science fiction massively multiplayer online game called EVE Online. And they just fell in love with the idea, so much so that they said that, okay, we'll take the risk because, you know, nobody has ever done such a collaboration before. There are a lot of risks involved, from technical risks to all the way to how the community would respond to such a project. And so very quickly, we set up a project which became known as Project Discovery, which is a small mini game inside EVE Online, and launched it together inside EVE. The first collaboration was together with the Human Protein Atlas, who are a Swedish research team curating a large data set of microscopic images of human cells and tissues. And so the Human Protein Atlas team suggested the subcellular atlas to be as the first raw material to work with. I haven't seen these kind of images before. They were just a perfect match, these beautiful microscopic images, so much so that the art director of EVE Online didn't believe that we hadn't tampered with the images to fit the EVE aesthetics. It's just how it comes from the science pipeline, a perfect fit for the video game. And so we created a small mini game inside EVE. Very consciously, we chose a simple problem, which was a simple classification problem. So you were shown one of these images from the subcellular atlas, and you were asked to mark the subcellular location where you saw the green staining in the images, which signifies the presence of some protein inside the cell. The project became very popular very quickly. So the kind of user engagement and activity, or player engagement and activity, exceeded all our expectations. But one of the best stories that tells exactly how crazy active players became is connected to these images. So one part of the concept was to make a real connection of this activity to the host game, meaning that the citizen science activity should be fitted to or connected to the narrative, fitted to the game aesthetic, and also be connected to the reward system of the game. And so for Project Discovery, EVE game designers created a suite of special rewards, and this was one of the super cool cosmetic outfits called the Sisters of EVE combat suit, which was the ultimate reward that you could unlock for contributing to this scientific project. And of course, when they designed this feature, game designers made an estimation of how much time it would take to unlock this reward, and they were calculating with something like 3 to 4 weeks for the most active players. The first Sisters of EVE combat suit was unlocked 17 hours after launch, and the second one a shy 6 minutes later. So this was the moment when we knew that this is going to work perfectly. This was the first major publication of the project, and it was quite significant because Nature is not really keen on publishing, let's say, fake science or made-up science. So, but they thought that this project is so important that they approved that these spaceships, which definitely don't exist, will fly on the front page of Nature Biotechnology. These are the spaceships from the game EVE Online. Also, I wanted to mention, because one of the important things or benefits for science when we're talking about citizen science is not just that contributors provide high quality, highly valuable data sets for researchers, but it's often a unique opportunity to do science engagement and science outreach and disseminate results for communities. And so we've together with game developers and CCP and the research team, we try to use these special opportunities to do science outreach inside the EVE Online gamer community. So what you see here, for example, was taken at FanFest, which is their annual player convention in Reykjavik, and we created the first, or maybe the only citizen science tournament ever, where we used this mini game and the players were competing in real life to be the best, and the best got a signed lab T-shirt from the Human Protein Atlas. And just to show you how important this is, was for the game company as well. So in the middle, you see Emma, who's the scientific lead of the project. And next to her, there is the red-haired guy who is the CEO of the game company, Hilmar. In 2017, we switched to a new project. So this first project was launched in 2015, if I remember well. This next project we started also together with EVE Online in 2017, when we switched the data set and the mini game inside EVE, which was a collaboration with the University of Geneva, and we started to look for exoplanets or exoplanet candidates in a data set. And so they created this small mini game, again in EVE Online, where you were presented these light curves, so-called light curves, which are time versus luminosity graphs of stars, and players were asked to mark dips in these light curves, which, if you are lucky and find a periodic dip in these curves, then you might identify an exoplanet candidate. And they created this quite complex interface, which is very close to what they use at the institutions, research institutions, to analyze these light curves. And also they made some sort of gamified element where you see not really scientifically accurate representation of the solar system that you're building, and then you get your reward once you submitted your contribution. Now, with this project, we're really humbled and happy that Michel Meyer, who is an emeritus professor of the University of Geneva, accepted to be part of the project, so much so that he got an avatar, although much less friendly than he is in real life in the game, who is handing out these quests for players. Michel Meyer is the researcher who discovered the first exoplanet, and he got the Nobel Prize for this achievement 3 years ago. So the fact that the Nobel laureate researcher is participating in this project tells a lot of how important these collaborations can be for science. He also came to FanFest once, so he gave a talk at FanFest, and he mingled with the players there in Reykjavik. This photo I love especially. This was published in Ars Technica. In the background, you see the beautiful facade of the Reykjavik Opera House, the Harpa. And on the right, there is Michel Meyer, and on the left, that's the Space Pope. He's called the Space Pope because he's always cosplaying as the religious leader of one of the races in the video games at FanFest. And on top of that, in real life, he's one of the lead education officers of the NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. So this picture tells quite a lot, or shows quite a lot of the interesting different facets of this project. This this is again about science engagement. Michel Meyer's talk was published on YouTube as well. And if you read these comments, this is the kind of enthusiasm and inspiration that you want to reach as somebody who's trying to do science engagement. With this project, we also had the same. So we had some really cool rewards for players. I also like to mention that reward, when we're talking about rewards, we're always taking special care that the rewards are not super lucrative in the game. So it's more like thanking the player for the contribution. If they want to do something lucrative, there are much better ways to do it, because we still want that the primary motivation remains that these people who want to contribute to scientific progress. One of the things that we knew from the beginning, or let's say we expected from the beginning, is that this could bring a lot of media attention for the project and the game. So this is, you know, this is something that we told for when we pitched this idea for game developers, that we expect this to happen. But this was what happened, exceeded our most wild dreams. So the project got covered in mainstream media. We got an article in the New Yorker, which is, I mean, EVE Online is a crazy game. Even if you haven't played it, usually you know about it. But to get an article in the New Yorker, that's a big thing. Just last year, we had 3 documentaries. One of them is running on Amazon Prime that talks about these projects that we set up in the last 10 years. Also, we got some really nice awards for these collaborations. One of the, so like the Webbies, we also received the Innovation Award from the University of Geneva, or the Community Leadership Award from the IGDA, which is the International Game Developers Association. One of the awards I like to mention is the Lavi Awards, which I didn't know before when they approached us, and it's a Google-backed award, and prior to when we received it, was handed out to people like David Attenborough, or it was handed out to the European Space Agency, and it was really fascinating to see that they considered a video game-based projects worthy to step in this line. In 2020, with EVE Online, we again changed the mini game to a new one, and that was around the first wave of COVID, when Bergur Finnbogason, who is the creative director of CCP, sent me an email that, you know, Attila, is there anything that we can do to help? And since everything was already in place, we already had a proven API on our side that served the game, that all the components were ready in the game. We managed to set up new projects very quickly, meaning 6 weeks, which is like almost impossible to imagine in a AAA video game. The other very lucky thing was that by then we worked together with Jérôme very actively on trying to set up new projects. And Jérôme had another prototype, which seemed to be a perfect solution. Plus, he had very good connections to researchers who are working in the field of flow cytometry, which is the analysis of the human blood to understand how the immune system reacts to certain conditions, COVID being one of them. And so we set up a collaboration with Jérôme's team at McGill University, and also with BC Cancer in Vancouver, and also involving the University of Modena and Reggio Emilia in Italy, who were at the forefront of fighting COVID back then, if you remember those reports. And so we introduced this new data set, which was inviting players to participate in a clustering problem, a clustering of a high dimensional data set. And again, this was kind of a milestone project in the sense that we managed to show that once this is in place, players can really act like a rapid action force in citizen science. And they could start to contribute 6 weeks after this whole idea came up of how we can use this to help help in a situation of urgency. And of that, I wanted to show you a video, which was a BBC interview. And this is also a very interesting video because it's a player talking about why they're participating in these projects.
Like you look at a plot and you just draw polygons around data. You can just sit there, pull it up and start doing it. And I think that was exciting to me, just how approachable it was. And then, I mean, secondly, and probably the more important part is just how relevant it is to me. Like I can finally relate to this.
It's really just like citizen science to a T. We had a giant group of people and we made this fun. We gamified this quite a bit. There's incentives for people to do it that'll boost their game experience, but it's also just the heart and soul of our community as well. These are things that our people really enjoy, and this really is for the greater good. And that was the strength of this project in particular, where this came out when everybody in the world was at its height of being affected of this.
We're doing two things. Is one, we can, once we have this infrastructure in place, we can help the scientists by accelerating the ability to look at things they know are there. The other thing we can do is something they can't do, and that's look at all the possible things that are in the blood. And so what we can do is we can take even people who are not scientists and show them these data sets, and they can detect patterns they've done a wonderful job in the online game to explain the technology and explain the kinds of things we're looking for. And then we just let them loose on this data.
You know, you hear about the COVID research or COVID going on all around the world. A lot of people, like, have had it or know someone who's had it. And just the fact that I can sit here at my desk while I'm waiting for a fleet, doing something that's going to contribute to, helping find out information about COVID-19, that's just phenomenal that I have this opportunity just playing a video game. And I think that's really kind of what got me into it, is that I can sit at my desk in the comfort of my home and I can help researchers do something, make a difference. And that's kind of cool.
In parallel with that, I'm starting to work on another major collaboration. Interestingly, it started before we launched Project Discovery with EVE Online. So I met with Randy Pitchford, who is the founder and president of Gearbox, who is the developer of Borderlands, the Borderlands games, to early 2016, and immediately he understood the possibilities, and he told me that, man, I want this in one of our games. And so it took almost 5 years to realize this promise. But in 2020 April, we finally launched Borderlands Science. Now, what you need to know about Borderlands, that it's not, whereas EVE Online was a natural fit because it's sometimes almost a meditative game or science fiction game. where there's a lot of downtime, so there's a lot of opportunities to play with a small puzzle game like that. Players already used to these kind of mini games inside EVE Online. Borderlands is the mother of all shooter looters. It's a first-person shooter, meaning that you're running around with a shotgun, and you better watch what you're doing, otherwise you're dead in a second. So it was not obvious how this would arrive to a game like that. This sentence, over 1 billion guns, was in their teaser trailer, and tells a lot about how this game is. Now, in 2020 April, as I mentioned, we launched Borderlands Science, which was again a collaboration together with Jérôme. And that was basically taking Philo and putting it into a video game. And that's how this arcade machine ended up in Borderlands. So what game designers finally decided on is that they introduced this new arcade machine inside the medic bay of Sanctuary 3. Sanctuary 3 is the main spaceship where you always go back from missions to sell your guns and to exchange or get your rewards for that. And so they introduced this new arcade machine in the medic bay. They gave you a new quest, so there was a big exclamation mark showing that there's something new in the game. And when you went there, you just go to this arcade machine, go inside, and inside there is this 8-bit retro styled mini game, which is really the reimagination of what Philo was before. And for that, again, I want to show you a video, which was the trailer for Borderlands Science, which explains much better what this is about.
Hey folks, this is Mayim Bialik, actor, PhD scientist, researcher, and your favorite person. Today, I'm here to talk to you about video games and science, and how we can grab both by their necks and make them kiss, consensually. Long story short, by playing Borderlands 3, you can contribute to real-world scientific research, as in data that helps real people in meat space. Speaking of meat, did you know that more than half the cells in our bodies are alien? Only 43% of our cells are of human origin. The rest belong to foreign microbes. These microbes have a massive impact on our body's health. The more we study microbes, the more we can learn about the accumulation of meat and existential terror that is the human body. These microbes are made up of DNA, just like us. Each microbe has its own special DNA signature, and similar species of microbes have similar DNA. If we could sequence all the different species of microbes found in the human body, which, remember, make up more than half of the cells in our body, we'd learn a ton about ourselves. To that end, the Microsetta Initiative collected tens of thousands of samples of, to use the scientific term, doo-doo. Extracted the DNA of the microbes inside and sequenced it. Now we just need to organize this data. Unfortunately, though computers excel at certain tasks like crunching numbers or tracking down specific pornography, they're not so good at organizing DNA information. See, different species of microbes have similar but not quite identical DNA. That means mapping their sequences can be kind of ambiguous. The computer makes lots of small mistakes that can corrupt downstream analysis. Which brings us back to video games. So we've got several million sequences that are each 150 nucleotides long that are riddled with small errors from the computer analysis. How can we get rid of all these errors? With your help. We've taken the millions of DNA sequences and broken them down into bite-sized puzzles that you can play and solve inside Borderlands 3. And try not to think about the fact that the DNA came from human excrement when I use phrases like bite-sized. By playing Borderlands Science inside Borderlands 3, you'll be directly helping our scientists organize and compare this dung data. The game is simple. You'll be confronted with different strands of DNA, each made up of individual tiles. It's your job to place as many of these tiles as possible in their appropriate row while matching the colors. It's not always possible to line everything up perfectly, but that's okay. By playing the game and matching the sequences, you'll also be identifying the errors in our computer analysis and helping scientists across the planet build a better algorithm for the future. And since all this research is open access, the entire scientific community will benefit from it. This research could directly lead to a universal catalog of all known microbes, which could lead to new breakthroughs in food, medicine, exercise. The sky's the limit. And it all starts with you playing a video game. But if the pursuit of knowledge isn't enough of an encouragement to sort through virtual butt microbes, then fear not. Playing Borderlands Science earns you in-game currency you can spend on booster items for your characters. Oh, and this is all totally free. Just activate the Borderlands Science machine on Sanctuary 3 and sort some gut microbes.
Attila, before you continue, I'm sorry to interrupt. I wanted to warn you because we're actually pretty low on time. Are you able to sum up our lasting thoughts in a couple of minutes here?
No. We still have a lot of slides. So I'll then quickly pass it over to Jerome. I just wanted to mention
Hey folks, this is Mayim Bialik.
Hello, Maya.
So how these projects actually solve the problem of engagement and activity. This is the original Philo interface that Jerome has already showed you, and what happened is, of course, there were really super creative modifications to the game, but the core game idea will remain the same. And so we have quite a good comparison of how this works outside of a video game and inside a video game. And so just to give you an idea that the day that we launched this activity inside Borderlands, we collected 5 times more data than during the 10 years that Jerome was running Philo. This is the kind of power that players bring to citizen science. And I want to pass it over to Jerome because he could tell a couple of words about the scientific results.
Yeah, I'll go very fast, probably, because hopefully, I mean, that we probably just pass links to papers we're publishing, things like this. But there's, I was mentioning, our goal here was really try to use the power of gamers to make better understanding and sorting data from Human Microbiome Project and from the team of Rob Knight at University of San Diego, when basically they collected stool samples from 10,000 participants, and we tried to classify the microbe they gave. Next slide. As Attila mentioned, for the first time, we were able to reach a critical mass of participants to solve these type of problems. We are above 4 million participants. We collected above now 140 million solutions. That's basically way more than what we wanted to do. But what are we doing with this data? Next slide. Well, we first aggregated, building this alignment, and you have to understand it's kind of very convoluted task, very complicated, because we don't know what the ground truth is. So it's about combining the different solutions we're collecting, comparing knowledge we have, and using as a guide to assemble solution. But at the end, what we're able to show is that the alignment produced through this method of the microbiome sample outperform current state-of-the-art method on what we call effect size, basically correlation between meta variables, saying if I drink too much alcohol, that would disrupt my gut microbiome. If I drink vegetables, would be good for me. If I do exercise, if I take antibiotics. And we saw that all this correlation with alignment was better explained by the diversity of microbes that we have in this alignment. So it was very encouraging for us, saying that we have now a reference map of high quality we can use for many different studies. Next slide. And perhaps that will be even more exciting for us, and is that we can use also this data to improve our algorithm. We can use that combined with machine learning method to learn what the algorithm are doing wrong and teach the algorithm to correct itself, the small mistakes it's doing, and to automate the process. And we have a couple of papers already published on that at the CHI conference and soon in Collective Intelligence, where we show that we can learn new strategies from the players there. So the player developed special skills by doing it, and we're able to capture them after by machine learning method. And it's probably one of the main message we have here is if you look at the data that we collected from the game, there's 2 major outcomes. The first one is like people are participating massively compared to Philo. By inserting that into video games, we had 1 or 2 orders of magnitude more participation. So instead of solving 3 puzzles, they were solving 30, 50, much more data. But also, what we noticed from our experiment is like the gamers contributing to this are also developing special skills that are matching the skills of expert. And in another project that we have next slide, and next slide after, that is the project discovery in EVE Online on the gating of flow cytometry data. We've been observed that a significant, large fraction actually of the players that contributed for specific time to this game were having results that was even better than some of scientists when they were performing the same task in the same interface. So it means that there's a lot of qualification, a lot of intelligence and skills that are hidden and buried into these video games. And this project can really extract them and make a good use of it. Attila.
Yeah, so I will really quickly wrap up. I'm not going into in detail with this, but what will be the next big step is that we're launching a new mobile app which will be connected to games, and that will open up this opportunity to many other citizen science practitioners, which is definitely a bottleneck for now. So that is to arrive in 2024 hopefully. And so that with that we'll end the slides.
Looks like Emma is frozen.
Yes.
Finished too late, Attila. Emma left.
I know she's back.
I'm so sorry. I think my internet crashed very suddenly on the best timing ever, right? Thank you both so much. I apologize. I'm assuming I'm good to move us forward really fast. For anyone who is still online with us, oh gosh, did I get lost again? Oh no, I'm here. Okay. Just to share with you all again, the links for all this, the 2 Philo and Colony B are both SciStarter affiliates. So if you participate on SciStarter and save them to your dashboard, you can actually earn credit. And we do have a recommendation for a book that relates to this topic. So I'll send this in the email, the follow-up email tomorrow afternoon or morning. So you will receive that from us as well. To wrap us up, just so you know the things coming up in the near future, we have Do NASA Science Live, so we won't actually be live with you for 2 p.m. Eastern next week. Instead, it'll be 7 p.m. Eastern with a special Do NASA Science Live event called Prepare for the Eclipses with host Phil Plate, the bad astronomer. And if you'd like to join us there, we'd be super happy to have you there. And Roland will drop the link in the chat, and we'll keep it in the follow-up email as well. So we're so glad to have you all here, and thanks for stopping in to learn about video games. That was excellent. Would you two be able to share any resource for if they didn't have their questions answered by the talk, or if they want to reach out about or figure out how to answer questions that they might have coming up? What would you recommend?
I mean, we are really happy to answer any questions in the future. So you can, I think Emma, you have your contact information, so you can,
Sure.
hand it out in this email, like our email addresses.
Oh, sure. Okay.
You can find us on LinkedIn. Also now, I don't know if you still have time for Q&A or.
I unfortunately have to run, but there were a couple questions. If Roland, if you want to answer those, and we can keep them in the recording for sending out tomorrow, if that works. They were in the chat. Actually, I think, Roland, they were your questions other than the, someone had a question about video games in space. So the one, I believe it was EVE Online that had the space oriented, like you're finding exoplanets, or was that Borderlands? No, I'm forgetting.
Oh, that is EVE Online, yeah.
Yes, EVE Online. So if you're able to bring that, or how are you able to translate data from figuring out exoplanets into a video game? So it's almost like it seems the question of what do how do we integrate something that's a different topic into a video game? I think it was a question about how that even works if it's not a space game, or EVE Online looked meditative and space oriented. So maybe that's.
Yeah, EVE Online actually is a space game. So it's the it's a big space opera story that has been told by hundreds of thousands of players in this virtual cluster of stars, of 7,000 stars. So it is a space game. So the fit with exoplanet research was just perfect. However, this is an interesting question also, because what we've seen is that there are many ways how games can integrate scientific topics with the narrative, with the visuals. One thing is when we are lucky and we have an abstract data set, like for example the project of Jérôme, where the data can be visualized in many different ways, and that gives a lot of artistic freedom for game designers. And it's also interesting that what we've learned in the first project, where we have introduced a data set from the Human Protein Atlas, as I mentioned. And one of the things that game designers don't want to do is to break immersion. So usually we don't do something or introduce something in a game which would contradict the lore or the story of the game. And the Human Protein Atlas project was interesting because the subcellular locations, the biological descriptions, were so good match for a science fiction themed game that they kept it in the game. So the educative value was much higher. Of course, we couldn't mention that it was coming with Sweden, because Sweden didn't exist in the game's lore. But then also we try to, or the CCP, the game developers, created special websites where you could dig deeper into the science behind and get much more information, which would in the game contradict to the lore, but out of the game that's absolutely okay. Or it's not even okay. It's highly preferable to share with the community. So
very cool. Okay, I am going to hop off. If you wanted to ask those other questions, Roland, you're welcome to, and I will see you all when I see you. Thank you so much, you two. Appreciate you being here, even if you're semi-ill, not feeling well. I appreciate your time, and I will talk to y'all later.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah, I just had one question. Are players required to go to the project discovery part in EVE Online to progress through the game, or they're just going there out of their interest in science?
No, so that was also important. I mentioned during the presentation that we set up the rewards in a way that they are not the most lucrative. So we don't attract players who would only do it for the rewards. But then again, it was also important that this is an opt-in feature. So we don't force players to go through this experience. We notify them. So there is this, like in the case of Borderlands Science, there was this exclamation mark that, hey, there's a new quest and go to the medic bay. But then it's up to you whether we want to do it. This is not something that we don't want to have players who would not want to participate in it just to get frustrated that they're pushed through this experience in the game. We want players those players who want to contribute to come and enjoy this feature in the game.
But perhaps
Which
what was
is more
interesting too.
satisfying. Sorry.
No, perhaps what was interesting too is like also when we developed Borderlands Science, initially it was designed to be a game, and event we're not sure we should put too much up from the scientific purpose with it. I mean, with disclaiming what it was for. But after the first test, there was a very clear interest from all participants that they wanted to know more about the game itself. And that means the main motivation for contributing to it was not really about the the credit and the skins they were collecting, but was really about participating and doing something useful with the game and fun at the same time. And if you remember the trailer that was that Attila just showed in the presentation, one from Borderlands Science, it really came after this. Initially, we were thinking of having a very short presentation, but it very soon became evident that we need to have a better presentation and explaining what we're doing and how they will help. And this is how this trailer basically emerged from the project. So the main motivation from all indicators that we have really is about contributing and not being there for earning credit. I mean, it's good to have them, but it's not that's not at all a game changer.
So interesting. One last question. I know that both games are available on several platforms. Is EVE Online also available on other platforms than PC?
No, it's you can play it on PC and Mac. You cannot play it on consoles, if I'm not mistaken. There is a mobile version which was developed by NetEase, but that's not connected to the EVE universe, but it's a separate instance of the EVE experience called EVE Echoes. So that's a mobile version of the game. And interestingly, with NetEase last year, we also had a collaboration, citizen science collaboration, based on this version of the game.
And do you have any data on what platform has been harnessing the most citizen science results in both games?
That we don't know. That we don't know.
Okay. So thank you so much for this webinar, and thanks for the attendees who are still with us. And yeah, as Emma mentioned, we are going to email you all of the resources we shared today, including the recording to this event. Thank you so much to both of you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.